See her. It's just such a delight to have Connie here. And your daughter's probably a fully grown woman that might have.
School now, 14.
Oh my
Holy
gosh.
smokes!
That is amazing. We'll tell her we missed her, okay? And she's going to be speaking about the 6 spiritual mistakes that may be increasing your anxiety. Talking about anxiety. I want to know what they are because this has been a pretty anxious time and I can stop making those mistakes. So please welcome Connie. And Connie, you have to pronounce your last name for me?
Habash.
Habash. Okay, Connie Habash.
Be careful of the cord. Good morning.
Good morning.
I'm so glad to be back.
Yay.
Oh my gosh.
I love having you
I
back.
miss you guys.
Yay!
Just like in tears with your singing, Jim. It always feels like home here. I've been busy. I've been writing a book.
Yay! All right.
It's coming out in August, so it's called Awakening from Anxiety, a spiritual guide to living a more calm, confident, and courageous life.
Wait for it.
And yeah, as Reverend Dottie said, we're in high anxiety times, aren't we? Yeesh. I'm sure if I had said that, like, in early 2017, man would have been like, yes, when things changed a little bit in our country. But so I'm talking about a section of the book about these 6 spiritual mistakes, and how much time do I have? 20 minutes?
Oh no, you have more than that.
Good.
You have,
Good, because I'm trying not to have anxiety about getting through all 6 of them.
you have 30 minutes.
Ah, awesome. Good. All right. So, and I call these spiritual mistakes because they're not bad or wrong. They're just kind of a misunderstanding or a misapplication of certain spiritual practices or spiritual principles. What we tend to do is we take the way we do the rest of our life into our spirituality, and vice versa. And so you may see some of these spiritual mistakes also showing up in other areas of your life. But anxiety is normal. It's a normal human emotion to have every once in a while. Like, every once in a while we're going to get a little afraid, we're going to get a little worried, we're going to get a little overwhelmed. It becomes a problem when it's a lot, right? When it's all the time, like, commuting here in Silicon Valley. We have a lot of extra, I think, anxiety in the area we live in. But I'll go through these, and you're going to probably recognize some of them. I see them a lot in my clients. I'm a psychotherapist, and with my yoga students, and I know all of them because I've done all of them. And I still work with, okay, that one's up. I'm going to move through that. So the first one should be pretty familiar for a lot of us. Perfectionism. Any other recovering perfectionists here besides me? Yes. All right. So, sometimes we're drawn to the spiritual path because we would like to become more perfected, or we see it as a path to become better. And the problem with that can be that then we criticize ourselves or get down on ourselves when we fall short of that perfect ideal. We see these spiritual masters that we were talking about, that UCM is founded on, and we think, I need to become like that. And I call this the saint syndrome.
Ooh, I love
Where,
it.
I go, oh my gosh, I need to become a saint. I need to become totally peaceful and perfectly loving, and never get angry and just wear white robes and glide along the earth. It's like,
I attract too much
or purple robes in your case.
Yeah.
Purple. We love purple. But my understanding of the divine is that it is infinite, it is everywhere present, it is in everything and everyone, and therefore there are infinite possible expressions of our highest and best divine self. And we're not going to be perfect. Spirituality is messy. Have you noticed?
Yes.
It's a messy path. It's not a perfect path. And our stuff is going to come up in it to be healed. And we're going to have challenges. And so we're not expected to be perfect. So when you find that perfectionism is arising for you, there's 2 foundations from yoga philosophy that can be helpful. And you might remember from some of you were at I think my last talk was about the 4 attitudes,
Yep.
right? All right, so I'm going to give you a little Sanskrit again today. So these 2 foundations of yoga philosophy are abhyasa. I don't want to take the time to spell these out, but you can ask me afterwards. And that means practice. Practice. It seems kind of obvious, but there's a reason why we call them spiritual practices. It's not spiritual perfectionisms. right? We're practicing all the time. This is what the spiritual path is practice, always, constantly, doing just the best that we can do. Not there's some end point and you've perfected it and now you can retire in your chaise lounge in a cloud somewhere. Like, no. Right? I know, darn! Oh, I just disillusioned everybody. And the second yogic principle that I think is really helpful is vairagya. Not to be confused with Viagra. Vairagya. It means non-attachment. So we practice without expectation. We practice without attachment to the outcome of what we're doing. We practice because we know it's part of our path, part of our exploration, part of our growth. And the results will come and we'll experience them and we can be joyful or we'll learn from them, either way. But to not be attached. So that can really help bring us out of that perfectionism. So, first of the 6. Second of the 6 spiritual mistakes is what's called the flight to light. Has anyone ever heard of this term, the flight to light? This was a popular thing. This was said a lot back in the 80s and 90s, and like near the beginning of the New Age movement, right? Which we still use that term a little bit, but it was really New Agey back in the late 80s and 90s.
Yeah. White lighters?
White lighters, exactly. Or another term for this is spiritual bypassing.
Yep.
Some of you have heard that, maybe?
I've used
All right, yes.
When I was practicing Buddhism, they called it storming heaven.
Yeah, there you go. All right, so what this means is a lot of time, back when I was getting involved in the New Age movement and when crystals and channeling and all that was first coming out, and everyone was saying, go to the light and surround yourself with the light and be in the light. And there was this shaming around like anger and anything dark, right? Anything that in psychological terms we would call the shadow. So the shadow is that part inside ourselves that we don't like to think is us. And we kind of shove everything that we don't like about ourselves in there, or everything we don't believe about ourselves. There can actually be positive things in the shadow too, but a lot of times we're shoving like, oh, I'm jealous, that's bad, put that in the shadow. We're not thinking that consciously, but or I'm angry right now, that's a bad thing. I need to just be in the light, surround myself with the light, and then people are walking around like, hi, I'm unconditionally loving. I'm very peaceful right now. And you can feel the incongruence, right? You can feel there's this tension, and it makes us more anxious. You know, the old saying, what we resist, persists. That's right. So if you're trying to say, I don't want to deal with my jealousy right now, that's bad, I'm going to make that go away. What we actually need to do is welcome it in. Like, okay, I'm feeling angry right now, or I'm feeling scared right now. And we can practice self-compassion. You remember the Sanskrit word that I taught about compassion is karuna. So we can apply that to ourselves. Like, okay, in this moment, I'm struggling right now. In this moment, I'm feeling really scared. I'm feeling really angry. I'm feeling really impatient, unspiritual things. I'm going to be with that impatience right now, or that anxiety, and be present for it and feel it and listen to it. Like, what am I needing? What do I need to express if I'm feeling angry? Or what action do I need to take to feel more safe? I mean, sometimes we get angry because we don't feel safe or someone has stepped over our boundaries. So rather than just trying to make it all white light, we take it in and we hold it and we honor it and we listen to it. And there's a whole process in my book about how to transform that. All right. Third spiritual mistake that can cause you more anxiety is leaving your body. Leaving your body. All right, now I'm fine with astral travel, out-of-body experiences, going into higher states of consciousness. That's great, but we don't want to do that while driving. Okay? Like, right? We don't. We don't, really. We don't want to be living in that all the time, walking around in something up here or in our heads. We spend a lot of time in our heads thinking and worrying, like when we get anxious. And so sometimes we've developed a strategy that it's not safe to be in my body, and therefore I'm going to be somewhere up there. But the problem is how do you think the body feels when it knows your consciousness or your soul is like not in here? It feels abandoned, right? And then it feels more anxious, right? It's like a toddler, okay? If you have an 18-month-old kid, baby, child, you're not gonna just go, hey, kiddo, I'll be back in a couple hours, I'm gonna run some errands. Where's mommy, where's daddy? You know, they're gonna freak out and they could get into all kinds of trouble.
Oh, yeah.
This is how your body feels when you're not in it. This is how it feels. And so sometimes we can come back from like a really elevated spiritual experience and we feel like this anxiety coming back. It's because your body's going, where have you been? Now there's ways that we can be in those higher states and still stay connected and stay grounded and stay centered. So embodiment is what's going to help us shift out of that leaving our body tendency, coming back in, imagining that you could bring all of your energy, and this includes like when you're worrying about things or thinking about things and your mind is at work or your mind is at that relationship or that family member, like bring all of that energy back in, center it back into the body, and then ground. I'm sure a lot of you know some grounding practices or grounding techniques where you can concentrate the energy maybe in your belly and then send roots down into the earth and connect to the earth. Your body is going to feel much less anxious, therefore you are going to feel much less anxious if you're centered and you're grounded in it. All right, good, we're coming along well. So the fourth one, and this is, I think, pretty common in a lot of spiritual consciousness, new thought communities, is you create your reality.
Yes.
Are you going to tell me not to practice the law of attraction, Connie?
Please.
No. Okay, the law of attraction is helpful. We can create things by what we think, by what we vision. It's great. Here's where it can be anxiety provoking, okay? So the law of attraction, for those of you who don't know, is what you think tends to manifest. You can create your reality by your thoughts, by visioning, by picturing, or by thinking of what you want, right? So I've heard this from so many of my students and my clients, but Connie, I'm having worrisome thoughts. I'm scared, I'm anxious, and then I'm gonna create that, aren't I? Right? And then I call it the law of anxiety, right? The more you have anxious thoughts, the more you're gonna worry about having anxious thoughts. So what we wanna remember when we notice this going on is, first of all, it's normal sometimes to have anxious, worrisome thoughts. It's normal sometimes. It's okay, right? Don't get all upset because now I'm having anxious thoughts and now I'm going to create something. And secondly, remember, not every thought manifests in something.
Thank God.
Thank God. Isn't that the truth? Oh my Lord.
Yes.
I remember I have had a fear of flying issue ever since my daughter was born. And years ago, I'm flying now. I'm flying several times a year. I don't really like it very much, but I can handle it now. Years ago, I took a fear of flying course at SFO, San Francisco International Airport. It's like the best in the country. It's right there at the airport, right where your big fear is, right? And I remember them telling us, you know, a lot of people get worried that if they're afraid the plane's going to crash, that means the plane's going to crash. There are lots of other people on the plane who have intention that the plane is going to get there safely and land safely. Right? You know, it's your thoughts are not going to necessarily make that happen. And that was like relieving, like, okay, all right. Because there are a lot of people that have fear of flying, that fly, and you just don't know it. They just sit there like me, like, you know, shaking or just, you know, trying to hold it together. So it's important to remember, okay, this is all right. Sometimes I have thoughts like this. And to remember to come back to self-compassion again. Like, okay, when we have those thoughts, let's be with ourselves in that moment when we're scared. What am I needing? Again, check back in. Center and ground. Be there for yourself. So a lot of times we get more anxious because we abandon ourselves in that moment. We're like, oh, I don't want to feel the fear. I'm going to run as far away from it as I can. But what you need, just like what a child needs when they're scared, is for you to be there with yourself when you're feeling that. All right? And another thing that can happen with the law of attraction and with the idea that you create reality is that we can kind of become control freaks and think, okay, especially if it's working, like, oh, I created that, and I created that, and I created that, and then if something doesn't work all of a sudden, and then we get upset, and then we can fall into this, pride-shame polarity.
Yeah.
I'm going to talk a little bit about polarities, right? So we have this pride, like, oh, see, I create my reality, and I'm creating. And then the moment that we don't, and it doesn't work for whatever reason, we can feel this shame, like, oh, now I'm bad, and I didn't do it right. I'm doing something wrong. Something's wrong with me, right? I didn't do it good enough.
I broke it.
I broke it, right? You know, I'm something, yeah. So to just step out of that polarity between pride and shame, and that we don't have to control everything. The truth is what's the greatest divine manifestor in our life is Spirit itself, right? So we know and trust and we hand it over to the divine in our lives. That's going to create far more than what we can imagine with our limited ideas of what we can create. Yes? All right. The fifth one is feeling the pain of the world. You know, spiritual people like you and me, we tend to be empaths, don't we? How many of us are kind of empaths? We're highly sensitive people. We feel other people's feelings. We pick up on the energy of what's going on in the world, right? And we deeply care. We're deeply caring, compassionate people. I mean, so many of you guys have all these amazing projects you're doing to help the community, to help the world, to help the planet, to help the animals, all of that. So we are actually a little bit more prone to anxiety than the average person because of that deep sensitivity and deep caring, all right? And some of us feel that it's of spiritual service to kind of take on all of that pain and digest it and process it through ourselves. And there might be some rare people out there, like there are shamans that do that sort of thing, but they also have a process of how to expel it.
Right.
And move it out and release it and get it out when they've taken it in, and then they move it out, right? And they give it to the earth or something much greater than them to process. But sometimes we don't even know that we're doing that. We're just feeling, you know, we hear bad news and then all of a sudden we're a puddle on the floor for days. It's, you know, it's fine, of course, to feel the compassion for those people suffering or those animals suffering or all of that. But if we're absorbing it and then falling apart because of it, how is that really going to help anybody, right? Are we going to be effective if we allow the pain of the world to affect us that way? If you think about first responders, like they cannot afford to do that, right? They can't go into a situation and go, oh my God, everyone's dying. They can't freak out, right? They have to just stay clear and centered and present with what needs to be done. And they do that out of compassion, not out of taking it all in. So it's important for us in the spiritual path so that we don't become more anxious and take on everyone else's fear and upset, is to be clear, what is my energy and what is not my energy, called me, not me, in the energetic tradition that I've studied in. Galen's not here today. She also studied with same energy class teacher. This is my energy, this is not my energy. I can interface with it out here, I can recognize that it's going on, and I can feel that there's a need for service, for compassion, but I don't need to absorb it like a sponge. I can keep it out here at the edge of my energetic field. So having some healthy energetic boundaries, it's like having skin. If you didn't have skin, there'd be a big problem, right? Right? So you have energetic skin too, out here, right? You feel through your skin, right? You're not interacting with the world or not able to touch someone. You still are able to without letting them go into your intestines and all that. I mean, like, you know, right? All right? So energetic, thank God, right? And all the bacteria and everything, right? Energetic boundary in which you can then touch the world with your energetic skin, not soak in the world. All right, good, we're doing well. The sixth and last of the 6 spiritual mistakes that people might make that increases their anxiety. And by the way, I call them, I call them mistakes, yeah. It's kind of like, it's like, you know how when they're filming TV or movies and they're like, take 1, take 2, you know, like, you just sometimes need to learn a little bit more to be able to apply that principle better. All right, so the 6th one, the safety, danger, polarity. This is an interesting one. The safety, danger, polarity. sometimes we're attracted to spirituality, consciously or unconsciously, because we think that it will make us more safe. We think that it'll protect us from the world, and it might, to a certain degree. But there's a problem inherent in that belief, is that if you're believing in a condition that's safe, then you're also believing in a condition that's dangerous.
Right.
You're actually continuing to perpetuate the opposite end of that polarity by thinking, okay, I'm safe over here, and over there is dangerous, and then we're giving more power to the danger and actually increasing our fear. Very interesting, huh? So, on the spiritual path, let me rewind a little bit about polarities. So we're in bodies, we're in a material world, and we have what they call in the Abraham Hicks teachings contrast, right? We have polarities, hot and cold, up and down, in and out. We don't have up without down. Tell me an up without a down. It wouldn't be, it would just be. You'd just be where you are, right? So the more that we have to live in this world of duality, but the more we invest in polarities, the more we strengthen both sides of them, okay? And so part of our spiritual path is learning to transcend polarities like safety and danger. The truth is, and this is just like perfection and imperfection actually, there's not really any such thing as perfection and imperfection. This is a thing that we've created as humans. It's a human concept. The divine doesn't have an idea of perfection and imperfection. The divine transcends and includes everything. It's beyond that, right? So the same thing with safety and danger, all right? It's not that there isn't risk in life. There are risks, right? But there's nothing that is inherently safe or inherently dangerous. So for example, you're out on a trail and you see a snake ahead of you. Is that dangerous?
Potentially could be.
It could be a dead snake.
Yeah.
What else?
Could be a twig.
It could be a twig, right? Or a rope, the old, like, is it a snake or is it a
Could
rope,
just be a
right?
garter snake. And then-
Could be a garter snake,
Yeah, after which you're non-poisonous.
right? The non-poisonous or king snake, yes?
And even if it's poisonous, if you leave it alone.
Right.
Like
That's right.
the largest number of snake bite victims are 13-year-old boys.
Yeah. We don't need to say anymore. Why 13-year-old boys? I wonder.
My 13-year-old boy.
So yeah, I mean, even a rattlesnake. My daughter and I, a couple years ago, we saw a rattlesnake cross the path in front of us. We just stopped, waited, went off in the grass, it's gone. So even a poisonous rattlesnake isn't inherently dangerous. There's snake charmers in India. They work with cobras every day. They know how to do it, not me. That would probably be pretty dangerous for me, right? But nothing is inherently dangerous or safe, right? Everything is. And if we keep holding on to our attachment of safety, safety, safety over here, we're setting ourselves up. So can we transcend that and come to a place of oneness, wholeness, and that as I'm present in every moment, I'm given guidance on what I need to do. Okay, stop and pause, let the rattlesnake pass. This doesn't have to be dangerous or scary. So one thing that, and it gets a little bit more challenging when we look at things in our society, things happening in our nation, in our world, right? And then we can get into not just safety and danger, but that's bad, that's good, right? That's right, that's wrong. So for those of you who were at my talk on the 4 attitudes, one of them here also is very helpful, which is upeksha. Upeksha is even-mindedness. That we look at life and look at things and look at ourselves with even-mindedness, meaning I'm not going to buy into a label or a judgment about this right now. I'm going to try to see it with clarity. I'm going to try and see it as it is in this moment. I'm going to attempt to discern within myself what is the appropriate response. So when we're putting everything into categories and labeling, and when we're buying into the anxiety that can bring up, like if this is dangerous, then we're triggering our fear. We're triggering more of that. So if we can go into upeksha, all right, even-minded, see things as it is, And then I can be more calm, confident, more centered within myself. So thoughts or comments on the 6, I got all of them, I think, yes.
Can you just
Yes.
name the 6?
Yeah.
Like 1, 2, 3, 4,
Yeah.
5, 6.
So perfectionism, right? And remembering abhyasa and vairagya, practice. We're always practicing, we're not about perfecting. And non-attachment, be unattached to our efforts and to how they result. Just keep practicing, keep doing what we do, and trusting that our highest good results, that we're cared for and taken and guided on the path. The flight to light. So rather than avoiding our shadow stuff, avoiding our fear, avoiding our anger, avoiding the things that we would label as bad or dark, embrace them with compassion. Be present with them. Learn from them. Leaving your body. So rather than the tendency to be up in our heads or be attached to other realms, this, we can bring the goodness of that, the divine insight and inspiration to this, to being in our body here and sharing that with others. So embodiment, centering, grounding helps us with that one. You create reality. You create your reality. So rather than getting worried when you're having anxious thoughts and worried that you're going to create that stuff, just acknowledge, okay, it's normal sometimes to feel anxious or worried or stressed out. I don't need to stress myself out more about that. And I can come back to being present here, be compassionate again toward myself. And then you can refocus on, all right, what thoughts would I like to cultivate more once I address the needs of that part of myself that gets scared or anxious. Feeling the pain of the world. So rather than taking on all the suffering, the pain of the world and everything else out there, have energetic boundaries like your energetic skin. Know what your energy is and what is not your energy. And then honor that. Respond rather than react from the edge of your energetic skin. And then the safety danger polarity. So stepping out of putting things into their opposites, labeling, and therefore creating the other end of the polarity. If you're attached to safety, you're going to also be attached to danger. And with upeksha, with that even-mindedness, seeing things with clarity, and transcending that polarity a little bit, and being able to, again, respond rather than react. The truth is, that a lot of our anxiety comes from what we were saying earlier about not doing things good enough, not being good enough, not doing it right, all of those worries and thoughts. And on the spiritual path, we're so conscientious, aren't we? We so much want to do it right, we want to do it well, we want to be good.
Can I go into that?
Yes.
So many people say, yeah, but what will they think? They're afraid of judgment.
Mm-hmm.
So they can't be themselves because what would, and I don't know who the they are,
Right.
But there's a they out there that people are consciously trying to please. And I think that's one of the biggest mistakes, when you're talking about mistakes, is trying to please everybody, because not everybody, some people might not like you because you have blue eyes, or,
There you go.
that type
Or
of thing.
curly hair.
Yeah, no, that's envy.
Yes, so actually I'm always open to hearing more, so that's another one, that trying to please people, but I don't think that's limited to the spiritual path, obviously, right? A lot of people are worried about pleasing people. But I think some of that falls under perfectionism, trying to
Yeah.
live up to
Yes.
someone else's idea of how we
Yes.
should
Right,
be.
yes.
Right?
Like that idea,
Please them.
pleasing people is a
Yes.
symptom, but it's not the cause.
Yes.
It's a byproduct of pretty much all of those other sins.
Right.
Yes. Can you think of other, Janet?
Well, I'm not thinking of another, but I'm really resonating to what you said, particularly in my work with responders. And many times when they are able to not over-identify, and they're seen by people as sometimes being cold or unfeeling, when they're trying to set that boundary so that
Yes.
they can be focused. And they have
Absolutely.
what we call the caregiver's delayed reaction. So they don't have the permission to have an acute stress reaction because they're responding. They're
Right.
taken care of.
Right.
And that many times what their unfinished business is, what stays in their backpack is when there's a 2-year-old child they're working on and they have a 2-year-old child at home. Where they
Absolutely.
can make that
Sure.
personal connection behind their skin,
Mhm.
or they can make that personal connection to, I went through that loss. My father was murdered, and now I'm dealing with this child whose father was just murdered. Does
That's
that
why
make
they
sense?
call them first responders, not first reactors.
Right.
You see, so, yeah,
Absolutely.
they can respond rather than
Right.
react, but they have to then they go back and they can deal with their stuff. Because my brother,
Yes.
being a firefighter and paramedic, you know, he's talked to me later, kind of down from, you know, talking down what just
Down the
happened and
line,
everything
yeah.
that he did and everything. And then he can feel the emotion of it and we can talk and I can allow him to do that, but not while he was in the midst of it, you know.
No,
I mean,
Right.
he helped my mother when she coded out.
right.
Can you imagine, you know, helping your mother?
Responding to your own
Yeah.
mother.
Oh my
Yeah,
goodness.
Responding to your own mother, yeah.
Yeah. So,
But what happens with that is that we do have to take care of that.
Yes,
With critical
absolutely.
incident stress
That's what I was just
management.
gonna say.
Yep.
Exactly, so we do have to follow up on that and not just assume that we can just meditate it away. We've got to actually acknowledge, express, do an action step where we clear it and we resolve it and we complete our unfinished business, put a period at the end of that sentence.
Yes,
So
absolutely.
that our poor minds can have a full picture.
Otherwise, it can get shoved into the shadow of like,
Yes.
okay, I don't wanna deal with all that
I don't wanna
pain
deal with that.
That's
and
right.
trauma that I've experienced by witnessing
Exactly.
trauma.
Exactly.
We have to be able, well, I don't like to say have to, but it's so vital to take care of ourselves through that process and give ourselves time to deprocess, to let the feelings move through, and have the healing of that so that we can continue to be effective first responders if that's
right.
what we do. Yes,
I wanted to talk a little bit about the creating your own reality, because then, you know, somebody who has some life-threatening illness, there's
Right.
others that go, well, they created it.
well, exactly, so,
And suddenly we're blaming people for these things and they're
Thank
going,
you.
well, they can just cure it.
I
And
can't tell you
it's
how many
just,
people have seen that.
and it's just really hard.
it's a way that a lot of people beat themselves up for things like cancer. I have an example in my book, I have case studies in the book, and a client of mine, it was the very situation, she had been so good about what she ate and healthy lifestyle and consciousness and all of it, creating her reality, she used law of attraction, and she got cancer and she thought, what did I do wrong?
Right, right.
What's wrong with me? And she really beat herself up for it, and she realized that she had to go through a healing process about that, I don't have the answers to why some people get cancer and things like that. But I know that beating ourselves up for thinking that we created it is not the path to healing.
And then other people, they'll feed into that going, well,
Right.
they created it.
Right,
Yeah.
right,
What did
blame
you
the
do to
victim.
bring this
Yeah.
in?
Right.
It's like,
Right.
Right,
Yeah.
so, yes,
That's a really hard one for me because I have had my own experience where I almost died from lupus, and it was after a really long period of major heartbreak and really just being in a really dark place for a really long time. And I was familiar with law of attraction and all of that, and then I got this illness, right? Well, I finally, after some hospitalization, they at least saved my life, got me back on my feet, and I had to like have this, because I really just wanted to die. I was so miserable. I had to have this like switch in my head to like really decide like I have to really want to live, right?
You gotta want it.
Yeah. And then I did everything in my power to basically practice all those principles. And this was back east, and I came back out here and I went to a Stanford specialist. And by that time, she was like, wow, you're a walking miracle. And I healed. I went in complete remission. It took about a year and a half, but considering I almost died from it.
Yeah.
So my personal experience, that's just one example. So that one's a really hard one for me, to not believe
well,
that.
I'm not saying not to believe. I'm not saying not to use law of attraction.
Yeah.
I'm not saying not to
Yeah.
transform your life through the power of your thoughts and your intentions.
But just to be
But to not
careful
use it
about-
to beat yourself up.
Not
Yeah,
use
yeah.
it.
Right.
Not use it
Exactly.
to
That's
to
it.
perpetuate your own anxiety if you happen
Or
to have
someone
a
else's.
wrong thought or a bad thought.
Right,
Right,
for someone
right. That
else.
it really, you know, there's different ways we can look at, let's say, for example, we get ill, some illness, right? And we could look at it as, oh my God, I created this, I had all these bad, wrong, awful thoughts, and, you know, or we could look at it as, okay, in this moment right now I'm conscious of what I can choose, and I can consciously work, as you did, on healing myself through changing my, so it's really the misapplication of a spiritual principle that causes our anxiety. Yes?
What I tend to think about in terms of the law of attraction is that there's a larger, there's so much going on our planet. And
Yes.
so, yes, some intention somewhere caused what happened, but it might not have been my intention that caused it. If the intention is that there are companies that are putting poisons in what we eat or what we drink, then you can get cancer even if you have a very positive mindset, because there's larger systemic ills
Exactly.
in our society, and we see those in entire populations. And so what we need to see globally is, how do we change the intention of the world so that everyone can be well?
Yes, so that's something I write about in the book, is that there are our own personal level of creating our reality, and then there's a co-creation around us, right? I mean, we've co-created a lot of things here in this world, and it's going to take co-creation to change a lot of those things, not just one person thinking great thoughts, but everyone in taking actions, right? But that's something I address in the book, and also that in my experience, we don't actually create our reality so much as we create our experience of reality,
Yes.
right? Because
Yes.
I'm sorry, but I really don't want to create my reality everywhere all the time. I mean, when we want to create sunny days every day, we'd have a problem, right? You know,
Yeah.
like I love sunny days, but we need rain to come, and even though rain's been coming more than what we prefer lately, right? There is also a higher order at hand here that nature knows what's probably going to be best for us in some ways, but that we create our experience of reality. So we can go out on a rainy day, we can think, oh, this sucks and it's muddy and I'm going to get dirty, or we can think, what a blessing that we're receiving more of this life-giving water, right? It's a lot about what we're creating by the way we think. Yes?
A lot of us seem to forget, we choose before we get here what we're going to experience.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, yes.
Oops.
Oops. We came in kind of knowing that we were getting into this.
You choose your parents.
Well, and sometimes, you know, life is just fun until it isn't, and it sucks until it doesn't.
That's right.
And stuff happens. And I just want to thank you, because on a very personal level, I needed to hear everything that you said.
Yeah.
I needed to experience that from outside. And the way that you stated it, the way that you presented it, it's like I hit an ego point. It's like, well, that doesn't apply to me. And it's like, nah, it does. And I'm sure the next one is going to as well. And for me, that is one of those mistakes, because, there's that place of, well, I should be better than this. I should be, it's like,
I've been on the spiritual path for so many years, and I should be beyond this.
yeah, and I really thank you, because you've put some things into perspective for me, and in that amazing, wonderful, gentle way that you have, and so I just thank you.
Thank you. Yes, I think we're good. So, thank you so much. I hope that you have in you what you need to shift out of anxiety and into that calm, centered, confident place. And I hope that I'll be back again sooner. But if you want more information about I have a women's retreat coming up next month, and my book release in August, I have my email list back there and information.
Hopefully you'll have us all as a part of your book tour.
Yeah, I'm planning on it. I'm hoping to. So thank you all so much. And
Thank you.
many blessings.
And we do buy stuff, so.
We do what?
Well, our congregation has,
Oh, I like that. One of the